Russell from Liberty Lockdown and Libertarian Convention Star to talk about Trump's verdict being guilty. I want to ask Clint what it is in the first place, because I heard that there were a lot of charges. I mean, I roughly know, but we want to talk about what it is. Um, if we think he's innocent or guilty, I think probably most of you will guess our opinion on that. And then I have the question. I think some do, some don't, but is this real persecution? Do they hate Donald Trump? Do they hate him because he's too real, because he loves America, because he's a white boy? No, I'm just kidding. But he's a man's man. He's not in on it. Or is this political theater designed to get us running back into his arms, or just talking about this instead of other stuff? So thank you, Clint, for being here first and foremost.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. I'm the big winner of the LP National Convention by losing. I feel great. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, I was running for vice president and I lost a nail biter, 47 to 51%, and it was interesting. But then, fortunately, the verdict came in yesterday and it totally buried that story, so I'm off the hook. As to your question, do you want me to just hop into it, or you want to?
Well, I wanted to say, like, you wanted me to vote for you for vice president. Now that you lost, it puts me in a better position, because now I don't have, now it's like an easy decision. Sure. I'm off the hook of like being a bad friend, like voting the other way. But
well, look, I was trying to hook you up, dude. I was trying to give you an out so you don't have to vote for Trump again. But the 34 felony convictions are the most trumped up thing I've ever seen.
Dude, I'm voting for him 5 times, and I'm taking out a loan to donate to him. I'm just
yeah, I mean, so essentially it was all about this hush money payment to Stormy Daniels, which, like it or not, that's legal. You can do that. You can pay people off to have them not talk, and that's what he did. The entire allegation was predicated off of like which account it was paid for from, like should it have been paid for from his campaign funds or from his business funds or from personal funds. I can't even remember all the minutia, but the way they hit him with the 34 charges was basically they said that like that's how many times they were emailing trying to confirm the transaction or something like that. It was very flimsy, to put it mildly, and it was past the statute of limitations, and they had to essentially say that there was a future crime that they intended to perpetrate, and therefore the statute of limitations did not apply because it was a future crime. So obviously you have to be able to prosecute that. It's totally anomalous. Like what people described it as, it was basically a bespoke prosecution. Like it was tailor-made to go after Donald Trump. No one has ever been prosecuted under these guidelines for this type of crime. It's obviously a political hit job.
Was it all off of the Stormy Daniels thing?
This trial is, yeah.
Okay.
But they
gave her a key. I did a video in West Hollywood in I think it was 2018. I'm losing track of time. I don't remember. But I did they gave Stormy Daniels the key to the city. So I'm just thinking about that, where like they knew she was like throwing a wrench into Trump. I thought all that stuff was going to be over with, because for obvious reasons, like, oh, they got her to make this drama story about Trump. Just fast forward that just to show how political it is. Like a random liberal city in Los Angeles is giving a key to a porn star 6 years beforehand for going after him. I never thought it would lead to all this.
That's unbelievable. I hadn't even heard that. But yeah, and then the DA, I don't know if it was Tisha James or Alvin Bragg on this one, but Alvin Bragg had sued Trump like over 100 times. A bunch of these people have been involved in, on the campaign trail, trying to get into their positions of power as attorney general or whatever, or DA rather. And they're saying like, yeah, like vote for me, I'm going to lock up Trump. Like that's the angle that they took. So how you could possibly view this as legitimate, particularly when you see the details of the trial, it's just the biggest BS case I've ever seen. And it's actually that it prevailed. And then on top of that, the judge gives the jury instructions right before they deliberate, saying, if any 4 of you can think that he's guilty on any of the charges, then that's enough to basically convict on all of it. And I like, my understanding of the judicial system is that you have to have unanimous all 12 jurors, otherwise it's a hung jury. Like that's always been my understanding of the law. So there's just so much chicanery.
Right. So I want to get this angle of it and get your opinion because my social media feed, right? I logged into Twitter, X, or whatever it's called, and my Facebook comments were the same. Where I was actually doing a meeting, and then I came out, and then it was like verdict guilty, and I was like, wait, what does this mean? Because a lot of people have been following it really closely. I haven't, and I'm not saying that no one should. I just wasn't. I was like, I'll catch it when I catch it. Now's a
Right,
good
right.
time. And when I heard it, like my feed is like I'm donating a lot of money to Trump. The Hodge twins donated, Andrew Tate dropped the N word with a hard ER, saying I'm donating to my boy Trump, let's just say. And, the donations started flowing in. I saw hundreds of tweets saying, I wasn't going to vote for Trump, but I'm going to vote for Trump now. This pushes me over the edge. And I just want to say this and kind of give it a preface and then get your perspective first, because I never know. I'm never 100% sure on anything unless I really am. But when DeSantis and Trump were running against each other, I remember that for years, nobody wanted to scrutinize Trump and the Republican Party and I would say, what they were in on during COVID or what they did and didn't do, because it's always
Right.
like left versus right or Fauci. And there's always like this narrative of like, I call it politics Tom and Jerry, where it's like everybody's chasing each other, but they never catch each other because then the show ends. So it's like this constant
Yeah.
chase of like Romney, Obama, this, that. Oh, we almost got him. Nancy Pelosi's running away, but the COVID, the China virus. And to me, it reminds me of Tom and Jerry, where I'm like, everyone thinks they're going to catch each other, but
Right.
they never, it's the show is that they can't catch each other. So then, when there was like 3 or 4 months before DeSantis got nominated or whatever, he said he was going to run. And for the first time after like years, because it was first January 6th, then it was Mike Lindell's like 20 million year cyber symposium or whatever. And then it was like, this might happen then. And nobody wanted to actually look at what was going on because it was this constant Democrats persecuting Trump. And then there were 3 months there. I don't know if it was 2021 or 2022, where you saw the Hodge twins, Tim Pool, Crowder, all the big hosts came out and were like, it seems like it's DeSantis's time. And I'm not saying people misconstrue this because they think in binaries. I didn't even vote for DeSantis in the primary. Didn't care if he won or lost. It's not about me liking DeSantis. I don't really care that much about him. With that being said, I just noticed that things kind of work in waves and patterns. And it's like nobody wants to talk about this stuff. Then all of a sudden for 3 months, everyone's getting it. Everybody's talking about how the Republicans are kind of just fake opposition and how they kind of screwed us and how they did all this stuff. And then I'll never forget the day the Alvin Bragg arrest happened. It popped up and it said Alvin Bragg's going after Trump. And then it was similar to what happened yesterday, where everyone's like, oh my gosh, I have to vote for him now. The election's over. Get the hell out of the way, Ron DeSantis. It's Trump's time. So here's what I'm going to say, and then I'm going to toss it back to you. I see a lot of people saying this is a huge miscalculation from the Democrats because he's getting record amount of fundraising. I think 30 something million dollars. You could tell me in a second. He's, people that are independents and moderates that weren't going to vote for him are saying that they're going to vote for him. So this is just my thought. I'm not saying they're not really persecuting him. I'm not saying it's completely staged or anything. I think a lot of it is real, but it's like the Democrats are so crafty that they can manipulate this China virus in order to get mass mail-in ballots. They could trick me into thinking like Romney's the evil villain and Obama's the hero, even though they're both kind of the same. And they can do all of these schemes and control both sides for 40, 50 years and get Republicans to sell pharmaceutical vaccines. But they just had no idea that persecuting Trump would guarantee him the Republican nominee. No idea that them doing this over and over and over again was a double-sided donation thing, where it's like, not only does Trump get record funds, but I'm getting ads for Democrats that I would never even send money to, where they're saying like, oh, it's a dark day for democracy. And he's like, it's a dark day for democracy. Like both sides are fundraising off this. So, my question is like, I just noticed that when something happens and everyone does the same thing like a robot, it just kind of like instinctually makes me feel a little weird. What do you think about that?
No, I'm with you, man. I mean, my take on it was like, I feel like the whole world for the past week has just been conspiring to get me to vote for Donald Trump. I didn't say I was going to because I don't know that I will. But yeah, I mean, there's this natural knee-jerk reaction when you see injustice that you're like, all right, I want to come to that person's defense. And like, I think what's happening to Donald Trump is injustice, but is it orchestrated? Is it a high level, basically psychological operation being ran against us, the voters in America? I don't know. It's very hard to say. Here's the reason that I think that there's some credence to your take that like maybe we are being played. Donald Trump very likely, based off of commentary from Mike Johnson and Boris Johnson and Lindsey Graham and a handful of others, was responsible for greenlighting the $100 billion foreign aid package to Israel, Israel, Ukraine, and Taiwan. And that to me is obviously not America first. I mean, that's not not even close to America first to be sending $100 billion to 3 proxy wars, but they're crediting Donald Trump with getting that over the finish line. That to me is a sign that he has been compromised. So if that's true, and if he is in fact, playing ball at the highest level with the military industrial complex, well, then maybe this is essentially a way to make him look like a pariah, make him look like a martyr, and then have the American people give their full support to him so that he can then get in there and do their bidding. Like, yeah, they do that. They shell game us. I mean, George Bush wasn't very different from Barack Obama. Like, that's kind of what they do. So I don't know that for a fact, but it obviously my skepticism about the political system and, just politicians in general is like, yeah, you have to be asking these questions. And I don't know what the answer is for sure. I think we're going to learn a lot based off of, does he go to prison? If he goes to prison, that'll change my opinion dramatically.
Yeah, it's interesting. I guess I like talking about it, and I wanted you here to counter it because I know that you might feel differently, and I think that's great. Because when I type stuff on Twitter, people are so emotional, especially like when something happens, and also I don't have a tone or context where I feel like people are always like, "You're bitter, you're hating," and it's like I'm just throwing things out there. You know what I'm saying? I'm not even. I don't care what you think. Like if you think it's totally real and you want to like drain your bank account for them, sure. If you think it's kabuki theater, sure. If you're on the fence or you're just trying to wait and see and make a decision, I'm fine with that. But I'm just not going to say the normie thing because like everybody said the same 2 lines. And it just reminds me of like a robot factory where it's like, I need to vote for him now. I need to send my money to him now.
Right.
I never wanted to, but now I do. And it's like, oh, that's interesting. And I'm not saying to not. I'm sure a lot of people sent the money to it. I want to say a few things, but this is one that I want to start with. I will defend Donald Trump against false persecution. I'm not petty. I'm not like Joe Walsh or one of the Anna Navarro or whoever, these characters. Like, that's not who I am. I'll do what I think is right, regardless of if it's a 2-way street, because I'm not spiteful or petty or that type of person. So I'll always have Trump's back, even if I'm just not like sitting there drooling over him all day. If something goes wrong, I'm gonna call it for what it is and be like, that's messed up. I think we both know, especially in probably most of my chat, way worse thing, even if it was true that he did it, like starting wars, killing hundreds of thousands of people, printing money, like locking down. I mean, I could probably name 50 things that are way worse than even what they accuse him of doing. And they don't seem to care. Jeffrey Epstein mysteriously disappeared or died or whatever and no one seemed to notice. None of his accomplices have been caught. So it's like even if it were all true, there's a million things that are worse. So I'm always going to have his back because it's just ridiculous on its front. This is not even a top 100 bad thing a politician's done in my lifetime, even if all of it were true, which I am not even sure if it is. With that being said, and this is something that a lot of people, maybe they don't see or they didn't feel because of how they see politics and they see it through Trump versus the left or Fauci, this and that. But I felt in 2021 and 2022, millions upon hundreds of millions of people, military members, nurses, doctors, they were being told, if you don't get a vaccine, you're going to lose your job and you're going to lose your income and you're going to lose access to your family and you're going to lose your life and you might lose your retirement benefits and you're going to lose everything. Like, and these are like regular people, not billionaires, not politicians, regular people that were faced with the most psychotic, held for ransom persecution scheme of my lifetime. One person that I was wildly underwhelmed with was Donald Trump. He wasn't in office. I'm not blaming him for everything or anything, but he has a voice. He has power. He has 100 million people looking up to him, and he barely said anything. He barely said anything about anyone, and that's what made a lot of people like Ron DeSantis for a little bit because he was talking about it, and Trump didn't care. He was just talking about how he did the vaccine and whatever. And this is what I would say and how I feel differently than other people. I will have Trump's back when he's persecuted because I'm not petty and I'm not a phony. But it's not a 2-way street. And I don't think it's a 2-way street. But a lot of people, they think it's a 2-way street. But it's like, why are people flipping their flag upside down today and being like, democracy's dead today? Yeah, not when they locked the country down, not 15 days to slow the spread, not when they printed trillions of dollars and guaranteed a decade of inflation, not when they started a two-front war and sent $100 billion to foreign countries against our interests, not when millions of nurses and doctors and, pilots and military members lost their job or got kicked out for not getting the vaccine. Yeah, you didn't flip up the flag then, but when it happens to a billionaire politician who didn't give a shit about you 2 years ago, now all of a sudden, like that's the part that I just can't agree with people, and it's going to make me quote unquote unpopular because I don't have a fake bone in my body to act like I think this is the first time I've ever seen anything. It's like Trump didn't give a shit about anyone else, and now they're coming after him. And that's why I always have his back, because it could be me or you, like it could happen to anyone. So I'm not going to be that guy. But I don't think like yesterday is the first day that democracy or the republic died. It just seems like
Oh, no.
political theater and like emotional, like sports fans, like throwing a hissy
Right.
fit for 3 days. I don't
Yeah.
know.
No, I agree. I agree with all of your analysis, actually. But I would just say that the reason I was being perhaps seemingly hyperbolic yesterday is that, it is a different thing when the former president and the leading next president uh, gets hemmed up on BS charges and is threatened with hundreds of years in prison. I mean, it's a different thing than when his supporters on that fateful January morning back in 21, the abuse that they suffered is fairly standard fare in any country in the world. I mean, that's the type of thing that happens very regularly. What is unusual is to see a former and probably future president potentially put in prison. I mean, that is the reason that I really emphasize the importance of it, is just that I think that is a, crossing the Rubicon type of moment where you are officially Banana Republic, you're Brazil, you're, whatever other nation you can think of that has had, imprisoning of their former presidents or future or current presidents. I mean, like, this is a big deal. It is. Like, you don't have to like Trump. I agree with you on every critique you have of him, that like he didn't stand up for his people. Why should, like, we certainly don't have an obligation to. And for the record, I'm not doing so because of Donald Trump. I'm just strictly doing so because of, like, if they can take down the former and future president over nothing, then there is no peaceful way out. There is no, like, oh yeah, we can just vote our way through this. Like, it's going to get really bad, and I don't want that.
Right. I guess this is where I don't disagree with you, because I understand this is unique. This is different. This makes it frontline news. This is, some would say more important. I don't think elections even matter now, because I think the donor class
That's fair
controls
too.
both sides, in the sense
Yeah.
of, like, Trump's biggest donor, the Adelson family, gave him hundreds of millions of dollars, and then he pardoned a foreign spy and sent the spy back to Israel on his donor's jet. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, it's a pretty, like, here's a foreign spy, send him back on a jet, and then we'll pass laws to say that it's anti-Semitic, to say that it's even happening against the First Amendment. It's like,
Right.
okay, well, that's kind of crazy, but no one notices that. So it's like, I'm not saying this isn't, but it's almost like, I'm noticing all over the country, even in nice areas, crime is up, theft is up, car robberies are up, car break-ins are up, house break-ins are up, and it's happening everywhere. And even if you're in a nice area, it's happening more and more and more, and none of the politicians care. Lockdowns, they didn't care. Gavin Newsom didn't care. Republicans kind of cared. Vaccine mandates, Republicans told you to go get the vaccine instead of taking a hardline stance and being like, it's a numbers game, let's hold the line. They were like, go get it because of this and that. And then they're like,
Right.
whoa, we didn't see that coming. So I don't disagree that this is kind of a bigger deal in some sense, but to me, it's like, it's not a big deal when millions of military men are forced to take an experimental COVID jab, or else they lose their
Of
job. Why?
course,
Because
man.
it's not Donald Trump or a billionaire or the politicians who are doing it.
Oh
If they
yeah.
had to face the same consequences, I think that they would care more. So I don't disagree that as far as elections and electing, this is such a huge deal that now people are starting to, like, lose faith and be like, well, if I can't even vote my way out of this, then we don't have a republic. But in my opinion, we haven't had one in a long time. And this is just raising awareness to that, because,
Yeah.
I do think it makes sense to vote for Trump. Strategically, I think he's like the best dice roll. And I think, the things that he does better than Biden are better in some cases, like border security, etc. It's got to be better than what Biden's doing. So it makes sense to vote for Trump. But it's like, I believe that the donors and the elites control him too. So I feel like the people that are throwing a fit as bad as it is, and I mean, I hope people don't do something stupid because they're going to try to set you up like January 6th. But in general, I don't know. It just feels like an emotional fit because people watch like Sean Hannity and Dan Bongino are like, this democracy died today. Yeah, not when they locked down. Democracy died today.
Mhm.
Not when you couldn't figure out that donors control the Republican Party. I don't want to be repetitive, but the reason he hired 99.9% of the swamp is not because he made a mistake because Jared Kushner tricked him. It's because, like Romney and Obama, the donors pay him, and then they're just like puppets of an administration that
100%.
they're not really running. So,
Yeah.
yes, it is a bigger deal, but it's like a rude awakening for a lot of people. Like the illusion of the republic has just been an illusion for quite a while, and it's been getting worse and worse and worse to the point where I feel like the country's worse on every level. And it's like, what does it take for people to realize that this republic is being corrupted on both sides? So I
Well,
agree, but I'm just like, I don't know.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think those are all fair points, man. And like, here's the truth. Like, yeah, obviously lockdowns and the 2020 era is a much bigger deal than this. I mean, because for the record, I put a lot of the onus on Trump for that era, and you know, the inflation, like what you're talking about with the increase in crime and break-ins and robberies and assaults, and it, like a lot of that has to do with the inflation that we're dealing with. Like when people can't afford to live, they start to take on additional risk when it comes to criminality. So that comes from the Trump era. Like that, like the inflation that we're dealing with today is a lot of that is the 7 trillion that happened in 2020. So like he is culpable for that. He is culpable for not speaking out on behalf of the J6ers. He's culpable for not speaking out on behalf of those that believe in bodily autonomy. He's culpable in not having fired Fauci. Like there's a tremendous amount of culpability on Trump's shoulders. The only reason I continue to defend him at all is because as you said, I think he's probably better than Biden. I think he's the favorite to be the next president of the United States. And I really do appreciate the fact, like what you're describing in how this is kind of a lifting of the veil as to the fact that the Republic has already fallen. It's not that it's fell yesterday, it's that it's already fallen. Well, it's important that people know that, right? So like if that's what it takes for the Trump supporters to recognize it, then good. Then that's great. Like we want them to understand how serious this situation is. Now, I would like for them to also understand how serious the conditions are in the Middle East and in Russia, Ukraine. I mean, like we're really risking World War III, and they don't seem to pay attention to that. And it's like, all right, this is why I prefer Trump over Biden, is because like he does talk about that sometimes. Biden never does. Like, and we need the American people to realize the risks that we're in. So that's my hope, is that he, like, the best thing about Donald Trump has never been him. It's been about what the system has done as a reaction to him, and the truth that has shown his supporters, like the media abuse, the judicial abuse. Like that's all. It all highlights what you and I already know, but for whatever reason, these people can't recognize.
I think a lot of people know what's going on. They just don't know what to do. I think
Well,
in
sure.
general, it's like, what do we really do? It's like if we go to an event, it could be a setup. If we do not, like, that's why they like flip the flag upside down and just get like pissy on social media for a few days, because it's like, what can you really do? It's a numbers game. One thing I wanted to say about what the Democrats do, I noticed that they're really smart strategically because they do things where no matter what the outcome is, they still win. Like even if Republicans win, they're still losing ground. For example, during Russia collusion, I remember I talked about it a few times, and I feel like I did a few really good reports on it. But I told my audience, I'm not going to talk about this every day like everyone else, because it's just wasting my time when I want to talk about other topics that matter. And that's what Democrats did. 3 years of Russia collusion, they didn't get any legal results, but they wasted time, money. They controlled the influencers. They controlled the Republicans. And instead of being like, wow, we have the House and the Senate for 2 years, what could we accomplish? They're on the defense and they accomplish nothing. And Paul Ryan goes away, and Trump said he did a great job. And we had nothing really to show for it. I don't know that they really did that much at all. And then, you move to this sort of thing. I look at all of the outcomes of what happens when they do this to Trump. And, one of them is that they actually stop him from running. I mean, that would be drastic. Let's just say they stop him from running, they throw him in jail, he doesn't go, and then it's a mess. Well, they don't mind messes. You know what I'm saying? They control the higher levels of the law enforcement. So it's like if people really did freak out, then it's just like January 6th, part 2, they arrest everybody and use it to persecute everyone. So they don't even care if it gets that messy. If Trump doesn't go to jail, they've wasted his time and money, and they've wasted your time and money. And now they got people that are getting crushed by inflation, giving their money to a billionaire when, also other billionaires are giving money to that billionaire. Miriam Adelson is gearing up to give them probably tens or hundreds of millions of dollars. Bill Ackman, who was mysteriously didn't care about any of this stuff until the Israel thing, and they're going to dump money into Trump, so he's more pro-Israel than he already is, which is insane. But nobody realized. So it's like not only are people suffering from inflation, but now they're dumping money into a guy that's already getting money dumped into him. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't; it's your money, do what you want with it. But it's like no matter what happens, Americans are getting screwed. So I think, and then this is just my interpretation of the situation. Like, yes, there's Democrats who hate Trump, and I do think a lot of these liberals and these judges, like, they genuinely do not like him. It's not an act. They hate him, and they'll do anything. They're living in a Marvel movie, and they think they're beating up the bad guy because they heard it on TV. But then at the same time, it's like, people, because of Romney, Obama, Trump, Biden, like, I remember during Romney, they made him look like a really bad guy, in order to make Obama the hero, because it was Obama's time. Does that mean that Romney's good because that he's bad? No. People say, oh, well, what Democrats have gotten arrested? I think what's his name? Bob Menendez got arrested. And I think another Democrat got charged, and Trump defended both of them. So you got Matt Walsh saying, why don't they charge Democrats? They have. They charged Ghislaine Maxwell. I don't know that she's snitching or anything, but does that mean she's a good person? I'm not saying that, it's comparable, but I feel like when it comes to this type of stuff, yes, there's people who hate Donald Trump. Yes, there's things that he'll probably do better than Biden. But at the end of the day, the donors and the elites, they've already won the election. You know what I'm saying? They've dumped so much money into Donald Trump already. He's going to do exactly what they want, just like he did last time. A lot of his moves that he made were because he took hundreds of millions of dollars, and there's an exchange there. So, I think it makes more sense to vote for him. I'm not asking people to like what's going on. But what I've noticed with all of this stuff is, one, the Democrats, they know how to do something that has 5 outcomes that even if the worst one happens, Trump gets all the fundraising, Trump gets all this, and he wins, they still don't really care because they control both parties anyway. And then also on the flip side is nobody talks about anything. America has toxic food. Everybody's getting diseases all the time. Everybody knows somebody that had a disease that didn't even really, what was uncommon 4 or 5 years ago. Everybody's addicted to pharmaceutical pills. It's one of 2 countries that run crazy ads for things you can only get doctor prescribed. Inflation was both parties. Trump sold the vaccine and didn't really give a shit. And it's like good cop, bad cop. Okay, but what's everyone going to talk about for the next 5 years? It's going to be Trump versus the courts. So it's like, even if it were all true, it's still like no one cares about themselves. And I feel like that roots from like people, they don't love themselves. They think they're going to fill the void in their life with being a cheerleader for politics. So I'm not saying the persecution's fake, but the Democrats know how to do things where they win every outcome, and Republicans are oblivious, in my opinion, of what they're even doing.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think the Republican voters to a large extent are oblivious, but the Republican politicians are largely in on it. I mean, that's the real, like, once you really understand the depths of this, you're like, oh, yeah, the GOP, like the vast majority, like 85-90% of the GOP, maybe higher, is 100% in with the Democrats on undermining and taking out Trump and, lifting up Nikki Haley or Marco Rubio. They want nothing more than to go back to the business as usual George Bush era. Like, they would love that. They are not America first. They don't care about their voters at all. They're scumbags. They're monsters. So, yeah, I'm not.
Some, but then like people like Lindsey Graham, there's nothing more Lindsey Graham wants than Trump to win. Like there's, not every establishment. 1,000%. Yeah, he's defending him on Twitter like everyone else. He's,
no,
Trump's put him on stage a few times.
I think you're viewing that the wrong way. They are putting him up because they know that he's the favorite, and like they have to have a good relationship with him. So I think that's just ass kissing. I don't think that they actually won. But I don't know.
Lindsey Graham cares about Israel and war, and Trump is, just like every other politician on Israel. So Lindsey Graham is just being a politician where he's like, yeah, Trump's the nominee. He's going to win. Get good with Trump, and then I'll do what I always do. I don't think it's like he loves him as a person or anything. I don't think they really care, but I think that, same with like these massive donors. Like, does Bill Ackman want to make America great again? You know what I'm saying? Maybe, but
Probably not.
wasn't he funding liberal universities for the last like 20
20
years?
years. Yep.
Never cared, didn't
Nope.
notice what they were doing, never had a problem with it, but now that there's too many Palestinian protests, dump your money into Trump. What do you think they're
Right.
dumping their money into to build new, churches and airports and, you know what I'm saying, build a border wall? No, it's to control his foreign policy, and that's what Lindsey Graham's doing. So I think he's
Yeah.
on Trump's side because he knows that that's at this point, it's, in my opinion, pretty dumb. Like some of the people you're talking about that think Nikki Haley's going to win, or they're going to like they're misreading the situation completely, and there's no way Republicans are going to accept anyone but Trump. Like if they did that, dude, it wouldn't work. Like people are not going to take anyone but Trump. So there are people like that, but I think Lindsey Graham is like a little smarter. He's like, nah, I'm not going to play the game.
No. I'm just saying what they want. I'm not saying what they actually plan to do. I don't think they're gonna try and run Nikki Haley through some sort of secret way. Because I mean, just so the audience understands, the reason that that's a potentiality is that I believe the sentencing for Trump is July 7th or 11th or something like that, and then the RNC is a few days later, and that's where they ultimately formally declare that Donald Trump is their candidate. And theoretically, if he is thrown behind bars, days prior, that would give them the pathway to attempt to replace him with someone else. So that I'm not saying it's likely. I'm just saying that would be how it would play out if it were to happen.
I want to present this and get your response to it, because I just want to see what you think, because there's a chance that this is random, or rather not random, but it's not like planned or theater. It's just like super real. I always look at timelines and what else is going on and what nobody can organize on based on that. And that's how, even during January 6th, the lead up to it, like I wanted Trump to win. I thought he had a path to victory even after the election. I thought maybe the lawsuits would go through. Like, don't get it twisted. I voted for Trump and I wanted him to win after November. With that being said, like the narrative, I call it like the hive mind, the Republican hive mind. It was different from mine almost all of 2020, because I feel like a lot of people were just like, it was like Trump versus the swamp. And I'm just like looking at the data being like, open the country. Like, I'm not playing 3D chess. Like, we're going to suffer inflation. People are getting screwed. But then in general, like once that happened, I agreed with people that I wanted Trump in office. I agreed with people that I thought he had a path. But what I didn't understand was, like, I was like, with all this manpower, for example, if people were going to January 6th, probably tens of thousands of people got in an airplane and wore a pharmaceutical mask, got out, took a selfie, went back home, wore a pharmaceutical mask. If MAGA or Trump or anyone said, hey, today's the day of non-compliance, everybody on MAGA, don't listen on an airplane, peacefully non-comply. And if enough people did it, then the mask mandate would have fell through. There's so many ways that we could have utilized the base to free our country, but everyone's always running around Trump in circles and circles and circles. And then they run into a Fed trap. And then people are like, why isn't the Republican Party helping the January 6ers? How come? Right. Because they set you up. I'm sorry. You know what I'm saying? They set you up. They set you up for failure, just like they did with inflation and the vaccines. They're fake opposition, in my opinion. Some people don't see it and they just keep getting bamboozled. They're like, when are they going to come save me? The people that set you up aren't going to save you because they don't give a shit about you, in my view. So then you fast forward and I'm like, when are people going to talk about what we're facing in America? I'm down to double task. Let's talk about Trump and the election, and we can talk about January 6th. But does everybody notice what's going on? It's 2021, and they're still doing all this persecution, and now they're bringing in the vaccine mandates. And one of the reasons it took so long to get rid of all this stuff is because the leader's Donald Trump. He doesn't care. Everyone's running circles around it. And then there's never a time for people to organize for us and what matters, because they're running around left and right, when I believe that neither party really cares. So then you fast forward now. The last 2 years have been Trump and the court case. I don't mind attention wise. It's not like I care who people are paying attention to on like, oh, pay attention to this person. It's not like a petty girl thing. It's just like, and I'm sorry to the women, a petty guy thing, just to not be sexist, hurt. But in general, now it's like, this is going to be the narrative for the next 4 or 5 years, where people are just going to be running circles around. We got to save them and give them our money. And it's like, I'm not saying it's completely theater or fake, but I just noticed that Republicans and conservatives, they can never organize on anything tangible that actually fixes the country, because they're literally like Trump watchers like a mosquito in light. And it's like, what about the mandates? It's like, shh, yo, anomaly, not now. Mike Lindell's got a cyber symposium. It's going to last 72 hours, and he's going to have experts that's going to overturn the election. He promised 100%. I'm like, he said 100% before, and he lied. Are you calling that patriot a liar? Gosh darn it, go buy his pillows. And I'm like, I'm not trying to be a hater, but I just noticed that the hive mind of Republican politics has been running in circles aimlessly. And it's like every couple of years they get lured to some, random event that doesn't do anything.
Well, I mean, truth be told, this happens to Democrats just as much. I mean, what you were describing earlier with the Russian collusion, like these people were just ran in circles over that, but it's all with a purpose. Like in that case, it was, in my opinion, it wasn't just to, poison the well against Trump and make them psychotically oppositional, but it was also because they knew that there was going to be a war with Russia, and they wanted the Democrats, the historically anti-war people, to be on board for war. So like there are layers to the operations that are being ran on both sides of the political aisle, and very few people recognize it. But I will say this, there's a insurmountable aspect of human nature when it comes to hero worship. And like, you need leaders. I'm as, strong and individualist and I don't need any leaders type of person as you'll find. But this is a really good example because Dave Smith, through this kind of ties into what happened with me the past weekend. Dave Smith was our leader. He was attempting to take over the Libertarian Party through the Mises Caucus. We successfully did so in 2022, and this was going to be our first attempt at putting up a presidential ticket, and Dave Smith was going to be that guy. He was going to be the leader. And because he couldn't do so because of family issues and things like that, the ranks fell apart. And I think that, no matter, and I'm talking about some of the most highly driven, individualistic, principled human beings, which I would include myself as being one of them, but like the entire Mises Caucus, we were all there to support Dave. And when Dave didn't want to do it, I stepped in to run for VP, but even that wasn't enough. It was just like once you've lost your general, the troops just fall apart. And that's for the GOP, for the MAGA folks, like that's their general. So as far as I'm concerned, the best we can do at this junction is influence Donald Trump to be better. That's all I've been trying to do for the past week, for the past month, is like, can I get this guy to talk about actually getting, not just Russ Ulbricht, but Roger Ver, Julian Assange, Snowden. Can we free these people? Can I like, okay, sure, Trump, I'll throw my vote to you. Who cares? But can you actually do the things that you didn't do when you had the chance? And we'll see.
Yeah, I have two things on that. The one is it's a Vladimir Lenin quote. He said, the best way to control the opposition is to lead it ourselves, right? And I've seen a lot of parallels like with the QAnon and the Bolshevik trust, where it's like, don't trust your eyes and what you see because there's a secret scheme of generals behind the scenes to like, crush it. It's literally copy and paste Bolshevik counter intel, where it's like, how do you control the opposition? You either give them a leader that you control, because then if there's, and this is the thing that I'll say, I agree with you on the leader thing. Like, I'm not that individualistic where I think that everyone should be. No, you need a leader, you need a team in order to win, and you need to go with the best person for sure. Trump, like, I think he's better for the country than Joe Biden. I just think on every topic, he's just like a serious leader, even if I disagree with him. Like, Biden is a joke. There's no reason that he should win the next election. It should be Trump. I feel like most people think that. With that being said, if they provide a leader that's doing, like you said, even when you're like, it wasn't necessarily what he did, but what they did to him, like that paints the narrative of like, that's our guy because of what they're doing to him. But it's like, if America had no leader, they'd be like, shoot, we need someone real. But if you give someone a leader, then there's 15 years of like, oh, we got the leader. We don't need one. He's right there. And then it's always like, oh, he just fell short. Oh, he just hired Fauci. Oh, he just took a meeting with Bill Gates. Oh, he just did an executive order to, go against the First Amendment. Oh, he just banned bump stocks. Like he just stumbled. Like, it's like, maybe, yeah, it's possible. But something about that to me just feels like it's theater. And I want to say this as well. When it comes to him in office, I saw his Libertarian convention. He said he was going to pardon Ross Ulbricht. He said maybe he would pardon Julian Assange. And these are all positive steps. Even that Trump gives a crap to pander to libertarians shows that like he actually needs votes and he actually wants people on his side, I don't consider it a bad thing. And I was like, the fact that he was trying to make some compromises, that's a good thing. That's what votes like. We're not mega donors. We don't get to control everything. But if we're going to vote in unison, we should get something out of it, a cabinet position or something. So I like the fact that that was the situation. I guess this is like my next thing with all these court cases and stuff, like the timing of it, where it's like it's going to be like what, right before the election or right after the election. And it's like, if he gets in office, I mean, this is a big if at this point, but I think he's the front runner. Say he gets in office. Do you think there's ever going to be a time where it's like clear for people to be like, all right, I want to influence him to do the right thing? Or do you think it's going to be 4 years of like, now's not the time because he's doing this, and now's not the time because they're doing this to him? I feel like that's part of their strategy to control him is get him tripped up in other stuff. So he doesn't care about other things. And then also people don't care. And I think that's the part that is interesting to me. Now is the time to talk about this for sure. But I feel like the Republican conservative movement is almost completely captured by Trump theater. So it's not that they like him, and it's not that he's the worst guy in the world. It's just the fact that they literally don't have any thoughts of like what to do outside of what he kind of like it's like the number one thing is election security. It's like, to you, I mean, I could think of a lot of things that I think are important. Yeah, that's one of them. But also, like, if both parties are screwing up on certain topics, then the election isn't, like it only
Yeah.
means so much if there's only two major political parties. So everything that the right does is in frame of like what Trump kind of like tells them is important.
Oh, no, you're right. And I mean, but the on the good side of that is like at least he does talk about the dangers of World War III. He does talk about I just want to see people stop dying. Like that is an important message. Whether he will actually follow through, I can't say for sure. I certainly hope so. It's existential that he does. Just to pivot briefly to like the most important thing that we're not talking about today is that Joe Biden, the Biden White House yesterday authorized Ukraine to use American weaponry to strike inside of Russia. That is an act of war against the largest nuclear power on the planet, and no one even talked about it because Donald Trump was convicted. I mean, it's a big,
Right.
big deal. And Putin has said repeatedly there will be dramatic consequences if you permit this, and they did. I mean, that any other nation on the planet, if they were to do that to us, if they were to supply weapons to some other country to attack us, we would say we are at war with both of you immediately. So the fact that Putin hasn't already done so is a miracle. So I just wanted to say that because I would have felt as
Right.
if we had wasted all of our time talking about Trump if I didn't get that point across. That's a really, really big deal. So
I
I
saw
hope,
that.
yeah, I hope that Trump is serious when he says he wants to see the death stop and he wants to have good relations with Russia. I have no idea if he'll prevail in that, but we need him to badly.
I got to read this comment. It was too funny. Sorry. I said, I disagree. I think if Anomaly was in charge, a woman would cry and then Anomaly would give her anything she wanted. I don't know where that came from, but I'm glad you wrote that. I don't know what gave you that idea or why, but congrats. That was a good comment. With that being said, yeah, I posted that yesterday. I saw, we don't have to get too much into it, but they constantly want to gaslight us on the TV that we're crushing Russia with Ukraine. And it's like, I'm no expert on the Ukraine-Russia war, but we're like, oh, we're not really fighting them. Oh, it's not a war. Oh no, we're
Oh,
not going to
dude.
give them these missiles. Okay, we'll give them the missiles. Okay, we'll give them the tanks. Okay, we'll do this. Okay, we need to give them more money. Okay, we will strike inside there. Like at first, a year ago, their narrative was, we're not even really fighting Russia. Like if you think about it, like this isn't a war and America's not involved. We're just like giving someone weapons to fight them, but like that's not us. It's them with our money and weapons. And it's like I always said, I was like, dude, as an American, you have respect for someone who's like, yeah, I'm going to do that versus someone who lies where I don't want to start a war with Russia, but if you're going to do it, just say you're doing it. Like the fact that
Yeah.
you're trying to gaslight me into thinking we're not. And now they're just like, F it. Yeah, we're going to attack them in their country. That's what we're going to do. And it's like, that's a desperate move or else we would have done it on day one if we felt that was the right move. So everything
100%, man.
reeks of desperation. And with everything that I said, I think this gets misconstrued as well. I want Trump to win because like Biden clearly sucks. Trump, it's a dice roll. I don't know what he'll do, but give him a shot. It's better than I can't look at Biden for 4 more years and listen to his people. So it's like, see, can he end the war? Can he finesse a deal? Can he close border security? Can he actually deport people? Like, will he? I at least want to see it, because either way, whether like, worst case scenario to me is Biden wins and then no one like moves on from Trump, because it's like if he was in office, it would change. Like, give him 4 years, because then if he does it, he's
It's
the
done.
man. And then if
Yeah.
he doesn't, you got to like move on eventually. So, and try to
Well,
figure out who the next
even
guy is.
yeah, I mean, even if he does do it, whether if he gets in there like 4 more years, that's it. It's over. So we got to move past him at that point. So that's the only hope for the for the GOP to actually move past the Trump era. But there's a really important point in what you were talking about, or what we were both talking about with Russia Ukraine. You said it's desperation. What they're attempting to do is they are attempting to provoke Russia into striking a NATO territory. That's what they're trying to do. And the reason that they're doing it so quietly, the reason that they would give this authorization on the day that the former president of the United States is convicted on 34 felony counts, is because they don't want you to know that they are intentionally provoking the largest nuclear power on earth to strike a NATO country, so that then we can send in troops and have a hot war with Russia. That's what they're doing, dude. And I know it sounds hyperbolic, and I know it sounds, like I'm just fear mongering. No, that's what there are serious players within the State Department, including Antony Blinken, that have been trying, including Victoria Nuland, including Joe Biden, that have been trying for decades to go to war with Russia, if not longer. So that's what we have to avoid, and they are trying everything. And thank God that it's weird to say this about Vladimir Putin, but if he was not more of a level-headed character, we would already be in World War III. So let's hope it stays that way.
But did you see Anthony Blinken play the guitar in Ukraine?
Yeah,
That was
yeah,
cool.
yeah.
Yeah,
He's
I
just
was
such a
thinking,
cool guy.
dude, I was like, dude, I hate this guy. He's like, taking hundreds of billions of dollars and getting us in a war, but he hit this guitar solo, and I was like, wait, am I like a huge fan of this guy now? No. Do I love the State Department? It's the most effective
It was that
propaganda
easy.
No, I'm just kidding. It's like,
This
cool, dude. Wow.
this dude really shreds. I don't know.
Dude, it's like when I see like there was this UFC fighter, he was in Masked Singer, and like he was a pretty good singer. It makes you want to root for him. Something about wearing like a donkey mask or whatever, popping out of a shark costume,
Right.
really gets you going. We don't have to go too much longer. I just wanted to wrap it up and say this and get your last thoughts. So
Sure.
yeah, I guess we'll just, before we get the last thoughts, what do you think is going to happen, if you could guess, as far as like, do you think that this is going to get appealed? Do you think that they're going to try to like put him in jail or put him on house arrest? What do you think?
Well, here I'll just tell you what the options and what they would mean, assuming they play out, because I have no idea. Like, this is very high level chess that I'd have to know both sides of the board and to know how these plays are going to come. So, but I think that if he is sentenced on first week of July, and he is given 2 years or 4 years or 5 years or 10 years in prison, this country is in real danger, and it ultimately means that they are attempting to foment an uprising in America. And for that purpose, obviously, would be the same thing after J6, that they're trying to, do Patriot Act 2.0, like basically just domestic, full police state against any sort of political dissident, against the entire America First, Make America Great Again movement. Like, that's a possibility. There's also the possibility that they are using these cases to build additional leverage against Trump to make them more and more their puppet. Like, they are trying to get him under their control in totality, because that's also things that they do. Like, that's the entire concept of the Epstein operation, was like, you build collateral, you build leverage, and then you use that. So maybe that's what that is. Maybe they come to Trump in the last minute and they say, hey, we can get this to go away, but we're going to need full funding to Israel, day one when you're in the White House. And he goes, right, cool, I'm in. So those are the two options. I think there's third, fourth options that get really dark, and I don't want to get your channel in trouble, so I'll just leave with that.
All right. Well, we can roll the dice today. We can get in a little trouble out here. You never know. But I think with that's definitely happening, like whether people want to admit it or not, where I've already noticed that the donations are definitely flowing, like, and he's not saying no to anybody, because he's, got legal fees and this and that. So I saw Schwartzman or something. He was like, "Oh, I don't like Trump, but I guess like we got to get into the anti-Semitism or whatever, like other stuff." And then you got this guy and the Adelsons, or Miriam has taken over now, and she's going to dump a lot of money in. So for sure they're going to leverage that to get Trump to do stuff. And the more he's in the hole for money, the more he's going to get it from somewhere else. I mean,
Exactly.
his people will help. I wanted to mention this as well. I noticed this, like whenever you hear Democrats talk about democracy, like everyone knows they're lying and they're full of shit. But if you really pay attention, I'm always like, if they justify it there, they'll justify it here because they don't care about other countries or their leader. It's all
Yep.
fake. So when I see them say that Ukraine's a democracy, well, what's happening in Ukraine? Besides a lot of things, they're closing down churches and going after churches because they're afraid they're connected to Russia. And then also now Zelensky, if the war ends, they'll have an election. As long as the war's going, he's in office, I think, from some martial law, like, no
Yep.
election clause during a war. And they're like, no, that's democracy. When there's a war, there's no election. When there's a war, it's reckless to switch leaders. It's like, well, America's technically at war, maybe not as much as Ukraine, but maybe more than Ukraine if you count all the countries that we're involved in. So if they're willing to say that there's no election during a war in Ukraine, what's stopping this same uniparty from saying there's no election if there's a war in America? In Israel, another one of our allies, they, have a lot of different things that they do. And I mean, their country's small, tight knit, and they don't really mess around. But I know a teacher got like arrested because they were, sympathizing with Hamas, they said, AKA, in my view, probably just like questioning the war narrative, or,
Right.
going like they now get to decide what's too far in questioning war. In America, it's not really that bad. I mean, they'll call you names and they'll probably hate you for questioning the wars. But in Israel, it's like they're pulling up and arresting. And it's like, they've shut down a lot of journalism in Israel because of the war. So I noticed those trends. And I was like, if that's a democracy, if that's the democracy in the Middle East and that's the democracy in Europe next to Russia, then to me, that tells me that the Uniparty and the Democrats are fine with canceling election. They're fine with arresting journalists, and and we already kind of know that. So I'm on the lookout for that too, because it's like part of me thinks that you know some people don't like Trump. Obviously, part of me thinks
Well,
they're trying to elevate him to be the fake hero, so then they could go do what they need to do in the other war and close, like just pass the baton for the next moment.
right.
And it's like already pre-scripted in the sense of like whatever's going to happen is going to happen, but now there's a movie dynamic to it. And then also there's this part of me that thinks like maybe they'll try to mess up the election completely and just piss people off and get them going crazy, and that'll usher in the police state. I don't want that to happen. I'm not paranoid about it, but after COVID lockdowns, you never know. They're
Well,
pretty crazy.
that's all I was gonna say is that, I mean, we had mass mail-in ballots and we were all locked in our effing houses like just 4 years ago. So yeah, dude, if you don't think anything's on the table, you should definitely be aware. Like there are potentialities for absolute insanity, bedlam. Now, I'm not saying it's likely, and I'm not saying I know anything for a fact is going to happen, but I think that I mean, that is the main reason that I talked so much about this case yesterday on X, is like it opens up so many additional pathways for really dangerous stuff. So, you know, my hope is that it won't go down as bad as it could, but everybody should be prepared just in case.
Someone said bird flu scares ramping up. Yeah, they're really trying to make that bird flu a thing, which is
Yep.
kind of creepy. Someone said, I just want to respond to this and then give Clint, let him tell you where he could find you. We'll keep this one under an hour. Someone said, Fat Ron Jones. You called yourself fat. I didn't call you fat, fatty. No, I'm just kidding. But his name is Fat Ron Jones, so I'm going to assume you're fat. He said, Anomaly, you were just trashing Trump the other day. LOL, you're goofy. For those who don't know that watch the show, I mean, feel what you want, but I do analysis. I mean, you don't have to agree with me. Some of it's opinion, some of it's facts. It depends what the topic is or what I'm saying. But I'm pretty transparent, and I think I differ from a lot of people. And I just want to say this. And I think the reason Clint is one of the most brought on guests is because even if we disagree on stuff or whatever, I know I believe he's being honest, and I think that he's
Oh, yeah.
willing to call it like he sees it, which is what is appealing to me. Not someone who's just like a fan and an activist. And I want to say this on the right, a lot of people on the right, they make fun of liberal media and Democrat media, as they should, and they say those aren't journalists, those are activists, those aren't journalists, those are professional shills. Yeah, for sure, that's what they are. They suck. They're not being objective, and their opinions suck. Whenever they have opinions, they're usually bad. But on the right, I think most influencers have turned into political operatives and activists. So when I do what I do, I'm analyzing the situation. You might not agree, you might not like it, but I'm not a political activist. I'm not a professional politician, and most Republicans are. So I feel that people think I'm being contrarian, but it's not like I'm trying to be different. I just am different, and I'm not someone who sees everything through the lens of like, what did Trump, like during the COVID? I just want to use this as a quick example. The reason I got most stuff right, the reason a lot of people got stuff wrong, is because I was actually paying attention and doing the math and the research and figuring stuff out. If I were like everyone else and I'm just like, what did Trump do? The Democrats hate him. They're trying to do this to him. Then it's just, to me, that's like, that's like bubblegum politics. It's just like activism, professional team politics for people that like really simple stuff. I'm not into that. That's not what I like. That's not what interests me. And that's not who I am. So it has nothing to do with hate or bitterness. And I see that all the time. It's like if I shit on Democrats every day, no one says you're bitter. They say you're funny. That's good. Democrats suck. They deserve it. But the second I question Trump or anything, or even make a statement that someone disagrees with, all of a sudden I'm bitter, I'm angry, I'm a hater. It's like, no, I'm doing analysis. It's just, unfortunately, it's extremely rare nowadays. And like 95% of the right, they're literally just professional butt sniffers. Like they don't have thoughts of their own. They don't have opinions. They're not paying attention to root level causes. They're watching the theater and the show. And let's just put it this way. It's extremely profitable. Like Trump raised 30 something million dollars in one day, and the downward spiral, like this probably has more views than it's going to get yesterday for my channel. Dan Bongino probably got more views. Everyone, probably Democrats got more views. Trump is a cash cow, for the left and the right. True. And it is what it is. It's good for the economy. Trump is better for the economy, directly and indirectly, some would say, if you count that. But that's just what I do. I just want to be clear because I feel like I don't care what people think, but it doesn't come from a hateful place. I'm just not like a fan of a politician. And I remember things that they did and things that they don't care about. So I think it's part of the trap that Democrats are doing is not just putting him in jail, because he's actually going to benefit off of it if nothing that bad happens to him. He might win the election because of it.
Right.
I'm just trying to analyze that because it's like I think it's if Republicans don't think about stuff and they're always just chasing the pin the tail on the donkey or whatever game they're playing. To me, I think that's part of what the Democrats are doing to control us.
Yeah. Well, let me just to back up your take on this is like for the commenter. If you want to just have someone that says everything Trump does is good, you can find 100 different commentators that'll do that for you. I will tell you, as someone who is now in this world, that all of them are more critical about Donald Trump when they're not on air than when they're on air. That's the reality. They are all much more readily willing to talk about all of the pitfalls of 2020 and Donald Trump broadly than they will ever say on their radio show or whatever. So these people lie to you because they know it's good for their career and they know that their audience doesn't want to hear it. If you're that audience, you're the problem. You need to actually hear the truth about your hero. And it doesn't do you any good to just have smoke blown up your ass while fucking the world falls apart. Sorry, I've been very good about not cussing, but I broke down there. So like you have 99 options. If you got one option of people that tell you the truth. I would recommend you listen to a little bit of the truth telling to balance out all the bullshit that you're being sold.
One of my favorite Kanye lines, I forget, it's in Can't Tell Me Nothing, the song. He goes, I'm on TV talking like it's just you and me. It's a subtle line. Like, I'm on television in front of everyone talking like it's just you and me. Where it's like
I love it.
There's a difference between like, yo, it's just me and the boys. But isn't that what podcasting's supposed to be? Like,
yes,
you're just supposed to be kind of shooting the shit. Like, I'm not here to make a CNN part two. I'm just talking with the boys.
Absolutely, man. That's what I got into this for. I didn't get into this to kiss ass and be some sort of like political lackey. I'm in this to tell you the truth, and I will never stop doing that. And if that loses me audience, I do not care. That like I'm never going to sell my soul for this.
check out Clint Russell at Liberty Lockdown. And I'm going to end it now because I have OCD and I want to keep it under an hour. So check out
Perfect.
Clint's stuff. He'll be back. And Dreamer
Yep.
podcast, over and out. Let us
Full,
know.
full recap of the LP National Convention in DC is on Liberty Lockdown on YouTube right now. That's it. We're out.
All right, we're out. Hey, what's going on, my friends? Just a few ways to stay in touch and support if you'd like to. The first way is